Hello everyone, welcome to the next webinar in 12D's training webinar series. My name is Lisa Stewart and I'm the Marketing and Communications Coordinator here at 12D Solutions. 12D's training webinars showcase common industry challenges, taking a close look at industry best practices and how these can be implemented using 12D products. The aim of these webinars is to upskill 12D users and broaden their understanding of the capabilities of 12D products. We run these webinars regularly and record them for posting through our website and on YouTube. The previous webinars from this training series, as well as the webinars from our Industry Solutions series, are all available on our YouTube channels if you missed those. During this presentation, you'll be able to type your questions along the way, as shown on the screen, and we'll answer as many as possible throughout the webinar. At the end, I'll email your questions through to the presenter for his input. Today's webinar will be presented by Graham Worth, who is Product Sales and Marketing Manager for 12D Field, with responsibility for management, development and channel creation of 12D Field services and products. Graham has nearly 40 years of experience in the civil construction industry and a wealth of knowledge of 12D model and other software packages. Today's presentation, BIM Setout using 12D Field, will deal with digital transformation in the civil infrastructure industry. As data managers, surveyors are faced with many challenges and are responsible for ever-increasing spatial and metadata information sets. Much of this data is of a basic XYZ nature without attributes or QA information. This presentation is derived from the shared experiences of surveyors over the past 25 years. The evolution of the surveying industry has been explosive. With the advent of GNSS, motorized total stations and scanning, positioning productivity initially outstripped the digital computing ability. The past decade, however, has seen improvements in digital capture and design BIM modeling. We'll explore the difficulties surveyors have experienced when setting out design solid models. Initially, designs using BIM or solid modeling were restricted to building structures. This format is now becoming the norm across most structural infrastructure designs. Surveyors' traditional use of line and point positioning technologies needed new methods to manage set-out of solid design models. Today, Graham will demonstrate new digital tools that assist surveyors with this process. Over to you, Graham.
Good afternoon, everyone. Sorry about that, I just had myself muted. Yes, as Lisa was saying, today we're going to have a look at BIM, and actually it's probably not so much the question of today, what is BIM? This is a favourite slide of our Managing Director, Dr. Lee Gregory. If I can get it to work, there we go. It's the old elephant in the room scenario. BIM digital engineering depends on who you're talking to. You know, you can see that from this little slide here, that it's a lot of different things to a lot of different people, and you actually need to understand, I guess, the difficulties. And I have experienced in the support side the many difficulties that surveyors are finding with solid modelling as it goes forward. But all, as it says in the bottom there, almost all BIM discussions in recent years have been on buildings and structures. So let's have a look. What are the main facets of BIM? BIM is a 3D digital model with metadata and attributes. And obviously 12D covers that. We've always been a 3D digital with metadata and attribute software. And BIM is also a process, so workflows and documentations, and that's covered under our 12D Synergy application or software as well. So what are the differences between vertical and horizontal BIM? Obviously, BIM has been mainly developed for vertical projects such as building sites, as shown on the right-hand side of the screen. And BIM is not usually suitable for large longitudinal infrastructure projects, or as we call it, horizontal or civil BIM, as shown in that little diagram there. So where are we at with managing BIM? The IFC format, which is being widely used now across the industry, has various definitions. The IFC 2x3 definition really only cover elements for buildings, as you can see here, columns, doors, slabs, and so forth. So it makes it difficult for surveyors to bring these elements within the model or the solid modelling to 12D model, or to any other package for that matter. It's a bit of a transitional stage that we're living in at the moment. So managing vertical BIM, buildings set out from solid models. Is BIM as smart as it looks? And I must say this presentation is a combined effort by most people that work in 12D. And I've grabbed a lot of slides from different people. Current instrument technologies in surveying, though they are very intelligent, surveyors still need to set out points, to set out survey strings or lines, and to set out level surfaces or surface levels. And so this has made it quite difficult with solid modelling, which is just basically a bunch of triangles creating a solid shape for surveyors to actually pull it apart. We've been putting together some tools that make it easier to do that. So the construction industry defines this to actually, surveyors need to actually set out points, lines and surfaces to set up shutters, to set up details and so forth for the industry that follows us, machines, carpenters, tradesmen and so forth. So managing, there are many architectural design and software packages all wanting to be BIM leaders. And this is an interesting point, because the most important thing for us as surveyors and also designers and so forth going forward is to have a format such as the IFC format, because it gives a standard that everybody can communicate between their different packages between one another. And surveyors have challenges converting designs to usable set out data. So we've actually introduced this IFC Express Reader within 12D, which helps that as well. A full IFC model imported within 12Ds, as we import them in, they are converted over to our format called Trimeshes. And here is a slide of a full IFC building that's been imported into 12D as a solid model in the form of Trimeshes. This is using the IFC standard elements. We can actually break this down into the elements that are available within the IFC format to date. So I'd like to just jump out of here if I can, and jump into a 12D live. It's always dangerous to be live in any software package, but I'm a brave man and I'll give it a go. So we're actually going to bring in here, I've got a little bridge that I was given some time ago, and I'm just going to read that in there now. I've just actually set this up prior to this. And how do we pull these models apart? And this one is a quite good example of that. The building we just saw, it has many different layers. It has its slabs and it has its columns and so forth. But this one that was brought in actually has, and I'll put it on in the perspective view, 3 models, 3 layers that's come in. So the designers have actually only used 3. And obviously they've come in as the beam, the building element proxy, which is probably the main one that designers and solid modeling designers use for a lot of infrastructure items. So if I add those to there and fit this in there, actually it helps if you add them to Chrome. So I'll add those files in, and we can see here that we've got a nice little bridge sitting in here. And I won't name the source, but I thank them for this bridge works in here. So as you can see there, there's not a lot, and I'll just remove all of them and bring them in so we can see what problems we face with these. So if I bring in just the beam, it's obviously this is a good example of the usage of these different elements within the IFC being used well. These are all your super Ts for the underside of the bridge. So as I add on the building element proxy, you can see that covers things such as the headstocks, the curb barrier elements, and the guardrail, and obviously the slab. And if I turn on now the slab elements, and I just might make this a little bit bigger in here so we can have a look at it. And I turn on the last point in here, the slab, which you would hope would be the slab, but it's actually not the slab. It's the a lot of the approach slabs to the bridge, the expansion joints, and obviously the columns and the piers for this bridge as well. So it does make it difficult to actually manage how we bring items in and out with this within this project. One of the ways that we can actually bring this in is to actually pull it apart using some of the tools we have here in 12D, which are very, very handy. They've been around for quite some time, but they've been continuously improved as we moved into this solid modelling area within 12D. The utilities. For those that are not familiar with the utilities, it's a way of actually managing data in what we call a global format. And so here I'm actually just going to go to A to G, and I'm going to change some items in here. This is a very, very handy item for actually managing data. And I'm going to actually filter this here, and I'm going to actually go through to view number 2, which is our perspective view here on the right hand side. And how am I going to actually separate these? There's many different ways. If we do a little F2, which is string inquire on 12D, we can actually zoom in and pick items. If I can, yep, just zoom in. Here you can see that's picking a slab there. Now, looking at this information here in the default string inquire option within 12D, we can see that this slab actually has a name, and its name is floor SB05, and it ends in the numbers 216. If I pick another slab, it's also similar name, but it has its own unique number. So you can actually change items within the IFC import that we've brought in as Trimeshes into 12D by using the filter of the name. So if we go up to here with the string info, we can actually put in those names and then copy them over to another model to separate these elements out within our 12D model. A little bit of work, but until we have a full set of infrastructure elements within the IFC format, and they are being developed, our Managing Director Lee Gregory is on the committee that's working towards bringing in the Civil BIM, and there's a couple more slides on that later. But we can actually do that as well. And for instance, here we've got if I look at the guardrail here, for instance, it is another thing here, as you can see here, it's a color. In this case here, it's a color, and I'm just picking the right one. There we go. 25-28128,128. It's a red, green, blue color, and that allows us to actually change that item as well through that method. There are many different ways within a solid model to actually manage these. So if I actually just type in here RGB, for instance, 255, 128, in brackets, you can see as soon as I press that, it's matching the color of those guardrails, for instance. So I can actually do a filter select on that, and we can see here I've got this option up here that says any string. These are not strings, these are elements. So we can change that by going to any element up here, the first on the list within the type of string, and select that. You can see now it's going to do any element except tins and rasters, of course. And I can filter select there again, and you can see down the bottom there, I've got a choice is okay, and I've got 40 elements selected from 3 models. So that's, and I'll just hit the change button there. Oops, it helps if you copy it to a model. And I'll just copy it to GA guardrail. Guardrail test will do. And I'll change those again there. So that's now finished that. And that's just one example that we can do with others. As I said, there's the element names. So when you're searching around, the columns are actually on individual names as well as the headstocks and everything. So there are some conventions that have been running in this design, which is fantastic for us to actually manage that. So I'll just finish that, and I'll turn off the beams, and I'll turn off the element proxy, and I'll turn off the slabs, and I'll just turn on the new guardrail test, and we've now got just the guardrail in there that we can further separate items in there, because when we look at these items in here, and if I just zoom into this area at the back here, we can see there's an element in there, but if I, and it's obviously the cover over the curved barriers, and I can pick that element, and we can see from that that it's got a name in there of a B general cover plate, which allows us to actually separate those again. So we can pull all the items apart, which is a really nice feature within this for pulling these apart. So that's a little bit about the how to manage data within the import of an IFC to 12D, and it's actually very important. I'm going to just duck into some slides again here now, if I can, and I'm going to show. I'll just bring that back up. Here is a whole building that's been brought in. I'm just going back to the vertical side of BIM. Here we've got some columns, slabs, footings, and the grid has been shown on the screen. I've just got those points in there, and that allows us to actually start pulling items apart in that fashion. And as we go forward, we'll also have a look at, I just want to manage the footings, and we can see from this footings that one of the issues with solid modeling is that it's solid. In this case, the footings are all white. Seeing actual points is not an easy task. So to actually get some unique setting out from this is a difficult exercise. So as it says down the bottom, it's a challenge to actually get those. So we can actually explode these, and I'll do that as an exercise now, hopefully live. As we can see from here, I'll just duck over to here, and I'll go to view, new, and let's a plan view, and I'll turn on that footing. here as we see this here in this case. And we can actually see here I've got the plate IFC footings. So there's the IFC footings in a plan view. They are a Trimesh, obviously, and if we actually open those up to a slab view, perspective view, I'll just get rid of those two there because we don't really want to see that at the moment. And I'll turn on those footings again in that perspective view and obviously fit that. We can see there as it is. But underneath the BIM menu within 12D, we now have a lot of Trimesh options. And I might just give a bit of a plug here. We have a couple of trainers who are doing BIM courses into the future, and this covers a lot of this area on how to manage Trimeshes. One thing that I'll note here at this point is that when we create Trimeshes from within 12D, we're actually applying a string to them, or we can apply a string to them, and that's through this set strings, set Trimesh edge info by strings, which allows the surveyor to actually set them out. So I won't go into that too much today, but that can be had a look at further down the track. So probably the main thing for surveyors in actually understanding how to manage a footing such as this is we can actually explode them. And what that does is it actually brings out all the information that we can see for the triangles and brings all the corner points into play as well. So I'll just select that. We also, picking things in this solid color here is difficult because it's solid. So we can actually do what we call a blend in this. And I'm just going to do a 0.2. One is solid. So I'm going down to 1/5 of the solid modeling, and I'm just going to copy this in here. I'll just copy that and I'll paste it in there, and we'll do 1 off the end of that, and I'm going to explode that now. Quite a quick exercise. That's finished. I can turn off this solid footing, and I can turn on the footings 01 as we've just done there. And you can see now by that exercise that the actual corners are visible. We can actually now turn off the line snap up here and just go for picking the corners with an F2, and I can actually pick corners within that, whereas that was very difficult beforehand. We can actually pull apart, and as you can see here from this, the string name in this here, we can actually also pull this building apart using the name. We can use the colors and a lot of other elements and details within the IFC model as well. So that allows us to actually create that. The other thing that in this case we can actually do is to go to the BIM here, and if I wanted to actually get the actual edge of that, there's been some nice macros written in the background here, and they've been hard coded in, which is wonderful for us. And if I now go to that footing again here and select that, and I want to add it to a model called 1 space GW EDGH, and I can actually, in this point here, I want to do this edge up the top here. So I can see there that that's an edge of 96.2 is the RL of that edge. So I'm actually going to do a 96.199. The reason for a millimetre below is in case there's we work to a significant number of decimal places. If the designer hasn't done that, this gives us the just that little bit below to allow the the contour of this shape to be cut. So I'm just going to call it FT, and I'll give it a color of yellow. And I'll process that now. So we can actually finish that, and I can actually turn on that edge footing now. There it is there. And you can see there that I've got those top of those footing edges in the yellow. It's a little hard to see in this case here. So I'll just actually grab a new view, view, new plan view, and I'll again bring that up. Those that are familiar with 12D will see that Graham Worth is a bit old school in the way he does things. And you can see there's those footings ready to set out. But those out in your webinar world will say, well, that's fine. That's 96.199 of the actual finished level of this top of this footing is 96.2. So again, we go to the utilities, and our global utilities, and I can actually go to H to Z would be better, Graham, translate, and I can actually pick this footing here, and I can choose the model that we've got, the edge, put in a 0 there, and 0.001 and raise it back up again, and I'll just replace that model there and translate. So that now we've finished that, and if I do an F2 on this again, we can see here that this top of the footing here is at 96.2. Job done, footing ready to set out. We can also manage the setting out of this through many different ways. Here I've got 12D field running in the background. And if I wanted to set out some of the things we can do with solids after we've actually created them, it is from a building perspective and even from some structures, is the segment set out. So segment set out will let you choose a segment, and it allows you to extend, and it only selects that segment because these strings can be, if we actually click on that string, it may be a bit hard for you to, helps if you turn the line snap on, Graham. You can see there that that's broken up into quite a number of elements again. So we want to be able to set out a segment from one side to the other on this area, and that allows us to actually do that. So I can get strings, set out a segment, and it will just accept that segment of that footing. So we can actually do that. We can also set out, obviously, the points. So we can pick points because it's been exploded. We've created corner points from that. And we can also do tins. And I'll just duck back now to this presentation here. I think it's difficult. So we've seen that exploding. We've seen the ability to change the way we look at solid modelling, because really solid modelling is quite a difficult task for some surveyors at present. At this point in time, I'd like to really stress to everybody who's out there, and please get it out amongst the industry, is most solid modelling is created from lines and points and strings. And if your designer can actually provide you with those, it's very reminiscent of back in the 90s when we were screaming out for models to actually set out road projects, and we had to go cap in hand to governments and designers to actually get the models, and that's now the norm. So things will change, and we can actually manage that. So here is an example using that the setting out of just a point using 12D field gives you the ability to actually position that. And you can also, there's tools from the exploded, as we saw before, you can have the edge strings of those slabs to explode those. And here is actually another one in that project we were looking at before. I've taken the slabs. The slabs all come as one, but I've used the element of the naming of the slab to separate the slabs out into their individual floors. It didn't take very long. It was actually quite an early exercise. We can explode those, and then we can actually get the edge of the slab. So anybody who's actually setting out slab edges, or even in a structure format, you can actually set those out as well. The setting out the edge strings, we can actually enable the surveyor to actually do those as well with the, as I said, the segment set out. So here's an example of I'm actually setting out that part of that slab, and it'll allow me to do all the normal to, from, left, right, forward and back situation that surveyors need to actually tell the carpenters or the formworkers where to move the shutters to actually position them in the correct place, and help them out if you're doing that as a live exercise on site, of course. So the navigation information allows you to, as I was saying, move forward, back, left, using just a segment within the building. This is the segment set out as a new feature within version 14. Fantastic option, and I'm very glad that it's in there now. So Trimesh set out, so you can actually set out to a tin, as you've seen. Those that have used 12D field, you can set out to a tin, but you can also set out to Trimesh and get levels to those as well. And again, you've got the control string there is the structural grid, and it allows us to set out that that footing as well for a level. With the use of IFC file surveyors, future is actually looking good. It's a bit of a breakthrough for actually managing getting in the data. It's early days, and again, I'll stress that it's very important, if your designer has created a solid model, ask for the lines and strings that he created from. Not always they'll give it to you, but it's very handy. So we can actually set out our survey points, we can set out our survey strings and lines, and we can set out the levels for the surface we're looking for. Just a couple of other examples. This is taken from one of our guys, his presentation, and here he's actually showing the setting out of a headstock and using the lines and creating the lines along that headstock. So you can actually manage all different types of structures. So let's look at the differences again between vertical and horizontal BIM. BIM has been mainly developed for vertical projects such as buildings. And BIM in the past was not suitable for large infrastructure projects, but that's changed. Why it's changed, I'll explain further as we go forward. And it begs the question, can BIM be civil? And of course it can. What does Civil BIM need to actually build things? It was obviously large coordinates, large and long horizontal projects, arcs, strings without diameters, which is an interesting exercise for those that have used solid modelling. attributes and strings, vertices and segments, name and codes, which we've been using here in Australia, null, Z values, drainage information, tins and surfaces, and the one down the bottom there that's important to all of us is, particularly in the surveying world, is alignments and a linear referencing using those alignments. Transitions and spirals, of course, and the most important one of all, a published format available free of charge to everyone. We've got a lot of different software packages out in the industry as surveyors. Managing those and bringing those into your package, hopefully 12D, is a very important for your time and peace of mind. Queensland have adopted some the industry foundation class for there, and they've done some pilot projects within Queensland as well. So just going back at looking at IFCs again, most elements for the civil, as we saw from that bridge coming in, are in the building element or the element proxy. So the future for civil objects in IFCs, to address civil BIM, Building Smart, the international group after looking after the IFCs, has a working group on how to provide transfer formats for non-building data. And they're currently working on alignments, which the alignments is actually in there now, GIS, roads, rail, bridges and tunnels. And 12D Solutions is working with these Building Smart groups, and Lee Gregory, our Managing Director, is heavily involved in that at the moment. There is a bit of a roadmap. It's not a clear chart of where things are going, so I'll just put some more information on the screen here. Where we're actually using Civil to adopt. This is one of the designs by our Peter Tayton from within 12D. He's done a lot of different elements. So there's structures, fences and so forth, and you can see there's fences, guardrails, all different types, lighting things, light poles, all sorts of things in there that are now becoming tri-meshes or solids within the 12D world as well. So the important part with the reading and writing of IFCs is the IFC has recently brought out alignment 1.1. So here's an example of data that's been written out of 12D using the alignment 1.1 IFC method on the left-hand side, and then it's been read back in. And you can, as you can see there, it's very, very similar in its nature, and it seems to be working very, very well. So we can get strings, alignments, tins, and that's the come out of the standard summit from Building Smart. Where else is BIM used within our surveying world? There's obviously SUI and utility coordination requires a lot of attributes and metadata. We're working on a group now with RMS to bring those standards into line for surveyors and what they require, and this allows you to run that utility coordination in a BIM format. KPIs for measuring BIM success. Reduction of RFIs relating to set out errors, clashes identified prior to construction. These are all the necessary parts that surveyors need. Better understanding of the design intent by the construction team. So you can actually see the physical model in something like 12D view. And the design model will be adopted by the survey team as a result resulting in the reduction of survey modelling and effort in construction. This is an actual quotation from one of our last conference presentations. Workflows and processes developed will be adopted as a business. So that's quite a good quote that can be read and understood by all. It's all about how much time we spend creating models. Here's an example that was presented at our last conference by Paul Hardwick, where he's taken and created string lines, very clear, very simple to see, and placed them on a bridge headstock. And again, you can see that in the exploded Trimesh in this slide here as well. So Civil BIM functionality, we have the pavement manager. So within 12D, we can actually manage creation of pavements. Peter Taitman has done some wonderful work here on the pavement manager. And the important part with this is when these trimeshes or solid modelling is created, they've also got strings provided to allow surveyors to manage those. And the strings are also embedded within the trimesh. Civil BIM functionality continuing on, traffic signals. The list goes on, utility pits, clash detection. It gives the ability for surveyors to see everything within the surface and below the surface as things go on. So Civil BIM, the horizontal BIM development progress with IFC, large coordinates, they're already handled. Large horizontal projects with IFC 4.1, which is out now, it's available. Again, 4.1 for the arcs, strings with and without diameters is handled within the IFCs. Attributes and strings, vertices and segments. For vertex and segments, obviously we still have to work with the 12DA format, and obviously strings and codes, which is quite an interesting topic and one that's being handled by most surveyors within states of Australia as we speak. We're working with a couple of groups to actually bring those together, and they're already handled within IFCs. Null Z values, it's not yet covered. Drainage and sewer pipes are handled. Tins and surfaces, that's within IFC 4.1. So things are alignments again within 4.1 using the 1.1 method. And linear referencing of alignments again. Transistors and spirals again within 4.1. And published formats. So you've got IFCs, 8X and 12D XML formats. So things are looking good for actually managing all of those in there. There's still the issue of adding edges to some of the trimesh surfaces, but I'm sure the those in the programming world are working on that as we speak. So these are already handled by 12D model, as you can see from that statement at the bottom there. And obviously the IFC method is coming up to speed within what we can do within 12D. So that's a little bit of an overview. Just a couple of points about 12D solutions. This is a bit of a plug. We are a member of the Building Smart, a founding member of the Open BIM Alliance. We've been involved with the international conference and so forth through our managing director, Lee Gregory. The model setup information delivery manual, the alignment, the roads, the rail, and the tunnel and bridges. So probably my last statement is that 12D model is Civil BIM. We have some challenges going forward in the short term, but I'm pretty sure we will 12D, I'm sure will support those going forward and come out with solutions that are best in practice. So thank you for that. Stay in contact. You can see from this slide that we have a number of different areas that you can attend. We've got the 12D website, we've got the 12D Synergy website, and we've got all different areas that you can join. One that is becoming very popular, and it's a great source, is the LinkedIn 12D model group. I had a request from a gentleman in Turkey who was very interested in 12D, so I've instructed him. Hopefully he's here today. Okay, thank you very much, and I'll hand over to Lisa. Thanks.
Thanks for that, Graham. The recording of this webinar will be available in coming days through our website and our YouTube channel. Keep an eye on our emails and social media for details of future webinars. If you need to contact us in the meantime, you can jump on our website that Graham's mentioned, and we hope to see you soon. That concludes our presentation for today. Thanks for attending.